Good evening, everyone. My name is Celeste de la Cabra. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, today I'm going to do my Letterboxd recap for the month of July. As you can see, I logged 71 films this month, and I think that these videos are maybe a little bit too long, so I'm going to try to blast through this one a little bit quicker. We'll see how it goes. A couple disclaimers I like to get out of the way first. This does include short films and supplemental films, so they're not all like feature-length theatrical films or anything like that. A lot of them are, but not all of them. When I say I've rented something, it means I rented it from 3dblu-ray.com. The link for that will be in the description. And if I've already covered it in a Cinema Sepulchre video, or if I'm going to cover it in a future video, I'm probably just going to breeze past it. I might mention it real quick or say it's been covered in a video or whatever, but yeah, I don't want to be too redundant, so we're going to do that. With that all being said, let's get started. Okay, first we're going to start with Mario Bava's The Whip and the Body. This was actually directed under a pseudonym, so it doesn't have his name on the credits, but that's who directed it. It's an Italian sort of gothic horror film starring Christopher Lee, but he doesn't dub his own voice. And apparently when he saw the film, he liked it so much that he actually regretted not doing any dubbing and decided to do that going forward. The film itself is very good. As you can see, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's really like a kind of crazy, beautifully lit BDSM Italian horror film. So if that sounds like your thing, check it out. I talked about this one briefly in our Criterion Hall video, but we watched David Cronenberg's Crash. It's a really fucked up, kinky affair that I highly recommend. Next I watched William Friedkin's The Birthday Party. I watched my Kino Lorber Blu-ray of it, which is actually about to go out of print. So the funny thing about this one is that there's no subtitles included on it at all, and the British accents on it are so heavy, and the film is so dialogue heavy that maybe other people have better luck, but for me, it's completely hopeless without the subtitles. So literally what I had to do is pull up a transcript of it, like a free transcript of it online, and like follow along on my phone while I was watching. Not ideal. Hopefully this is just going out of print so they can repress it with subtitles this time. I know that they just did that for the oblong box, so I hope that trend continues because I think subtitles are like a bare minimum. Okay, so next we watched the 4K UHD edition of Jaws. It looks spectacular. The film is great, and I'd consider it a pretty much a 4K disc essential. So, oh boy. So after that, we decided to, kind of like how I did with the Birds and Birdemic, I wanted to pair Jaws with like a really piece of shit trash shark movie. God Awful Movies covered this, Noah's Shark, and so I thought it was going to be like a Christian propaganda Z-rate horror film. It's not. It just kind of uses the pun and goes from there. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not really the kind of unintentionally terrible Christian propaganda I was hoping it would be. It's just one of these like shoestring budget, intentionally terrible things. We didn't even really finish it, honestly. I started fast forwarding just to find something interesting. And to my great surprise, there wasn't anything. So since I felt conned by that pick, I wanted to get, you know, the real shit in terms of a truly abysmal Christian film. And so this isn't a shark movie, but there is a shark in it. And so I thought that this was pretty close. We went with Finding Jesus. Now, in my last update, I said that Birdemic was the worst film I'd ever seen in my life. I didn't expect to top that so quickly, but Finding Jesus is without a doubt, without question, far and away the single worst film I've ever seen in my life. God Awful Movies did a review on this as well, and I highly recommend listening to that because they get more comprehensive than I could ever hope to be in this little video here. But I struggle to describe just how harrowing of an experience this is. What a abomination this is. What an insult it is to cinema as an art form. Words fail me when I try to describe just how physically painful this experience was. But I think one more instance of the exact same shot of the shark would have given me like a physical reaction, and I would have either thrown up or died. I'm not sure. Continuing on with our kind of Jaws-esque theme, we went ahead and watched Piranha. I watched the Scream Factory Steelbook edition with the 4K restoration on it. It's directed by Joe Dante of Gremlins and The Howling fame. I actually think this one's really great. It definitely has like a leftist bent to it, which I thought was pretty clear. And then when I looked at the credits on it and everything, John Sayles, the director of Matewan, actually wrote this. So I guess I wasn't making it up. Yeah, this is a pretty fun, pretty bloody sort of Jaws ripoff, so I recommend it. Next, we watched the Jaws restoration documentary, which is always fun. I love seeing how much time and effort goes into these restorations. This one seemed especially involved. Like, they kind of had to do it from the ground up, and I mean, all their work paid off because it's a beautiful restoration. Okay, a quick lighting change. This isn't ideal, but the setup I had before was not at all reliable, so we're just going to roll with it. Next, we watched the Criterion edition of Punch Drunk Love, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson and starring Adam Sandler. This one I thought was really special. It's so unique and really heartfelt, but also very funny and satirical. I have a reading on this film that I don't really see much other places, and I can't really get into it here without spoiling it. So I don't know, if you'd be interested in a full review of this, let me know. I might end up doing that at some point. But I don't know, every time I watch something like this where Adam Sandler is actually an actor, it is just kind of sad to me, because like, so much wasted potential, you know? Next, I watched Marnie out of the Masterpiece Collection box set. I have a little quick review on this. I do think it's really well made and it's effective in its storytelling, but there's a really violent misogyny that is like at the core of this film that you really just can't get away from or read as satire or critique. And that's just really unfortunate, and I think it mars what is otherwise a really great film. It's worth a look, but yeah. Next we have The Devil Rides Out. This is a Hammer horror film starring Christopher Lee as a good guy for once instead of a villain. He's pretty good, and you know, there's like 15 to 30 minutes of stuff in this that's really cool and entertaining, and then the rest of it is pretty boring, and then it ends up just being really obviously like, I don't know, a better version of like a Christian propaganda film. It's just a little disappointing. I didn't really get the hype on this. Like, yeah, you could make a highlight reel and this would look like the best movie ever, but in its totality, I don't think it's that great. Next was Hitchcock's Torn Curtain, again off of the box set. This one stars Paul Newman, who I'm a big fan of, and Julie Andrews, who was really great too. I know a lot of people don't like this one, but I think it's really great, actually. I think it's a really effective, really tense thriller, especially in the second half. Like, it's a nail-biter for sure. Like, I mean, I kind of said this in the little review I wrote, but like, you know, some of the questionable politics aside, like, there's something to be said about a thriller when, like, I just have to stay up way past my bedtime to actually finish it, you know? Okay, next I watched the Criterion edition of Repo Man. I thought this was really great. It's just a really unique, fun, kind of punk sci-fi romp, adventure, odyssey, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's just really unique. It's got so much great style to it, and I really loved it. So I think you should check out Repo Man. Next was The Trouble with Marnie. That's just the making of. Another making of for Torn Curtain Rising, both of which were okay. Then we just have a couple supplements off of the Devil Rides Out disc, which I did rent. I didn't buy it. And then, yeah, we have the Criterion edition of David Byrne's True Stories. This is one that didn't really click with me the first time I saw it, but rewatching it now, I loved it so much. David Byrne's sense of humor, I think, is probably an acquired taste, but man, I think this is John Goodman's first like serious starring role, and he is just absolutely immaculate in this film. Like, I don't know, between this and The Big Lebowski, I struggle to think of more effective comedic actors. And of course, the soundtrack is just wonderful. I think it helps you appreciate the Talking Heads' True Stories album, because I know that's not one of their more acclaimed albums, but it's really got some great, great songs on it. And then to finish off this page, we just have 3 supplements on the Repo Man disc. The one I especially want to talk about is this Harry Zen Stanton. This is really just one of the most unique and interesting interviews I've ever seen on a supplement on a Blu-ray disc, you know? There's something about watching this that, I mean, Harry Dean Stanton is obviously a great actor and very prolific. He's in a lot of films that I've seen and probably will see, but he's not one that's ever really jumped out to me until I watched this interview, and I mean, I'm probably going to watch it again at some point. I just couldn't believe how candid and how honest he is, how unique his perspectives are. I think it's the director of Repo Man that's conducting the interview, or it's one of the producers, I don't remember, but I don't think it's the director, it was somebody else. But he's asking him like very hard-hitting questions. He's not cutting him any slack or giving him a softball interview, and Harry Dean is just like coming back, you know, 10 times harder. He really gets into his kind of philosophy of nihilism and, you know, all these other things that he believes, and it's just such a candid interview that you just don't really get with famous actors to this extent. I'm sure they exist, but this felt just especially unique. This is on YouTube. If you look up Harry Dean Stanton interview, I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. Check it out. Okay, next we went and morbed on them and rented the 4K UHD of Morbius, because I ain't buying that shit. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not at all a Marvel fan or an MCU fan or whatever you want to say. And I like sexy vampires and I like Molgoth movies. I did not hate this. I gotta be honest with you. I liked that this had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there wasn't this like overarching ridiculous narrative that you had to watch 55 plus hours of content to understand. It wasn't really trying to be more than it was. There's some shoehorned, not even end credit scenes. It's like they couldn't trust the audience to stick around that long. They're like beginning of credit scenes or mid credit scenes that really shoehorn in this like connection to the MCU and to Spider-Man and all this other stuff. That felt to me like it was a studio thing that was like added at the last second. I don't know if that's actually true, but it didn't match the tone or really the goals of the film at all. It was kind of blindsided me. It's terrible, but I honestly don't even consider it part of the film because it was just so ridiculous and like stuck in at the end, in the credits, you know. But man, I really hate Jared Leto, but him and Matt Smith both were looking real hot as the sexy vamp boys in this one. What can you do? I am a big fan of Matt Smith, actually, and I think he deserves better than this, but whatever. There's also some very, very potent homoerotic undertones in this film, to the point where I think you could pretty rationally give this film just a straight up queer reading. And that's how I like to read it, because otherwise it's just terrible. But I don't know. There's some fun parts in it. There's some cool goth boy bits in it. But no, it's not that good. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's not even close to the worst superhero movie I've ever seen. It's definitely less boring than a lot of those really long ones, but yeah, that's Morbius. Next we have The Omen 2, Damien. The This was off of my Scream Factory set. I actually really liked this. It's definitely a very different tone and atmosphere and vibe and everything from the first one. The first one is very artsy, like classic Hollywood sort of feel. And this one feels more like your standard mid-budget horror stuff, you know? There's some great death scenes in it, as are in most of them. And I actually really liked the angle of exploring Damien's psychological profile as he comes to realize who he is and what that means for him in his life. I think it's an interesting angle, and I think that the film is pretty well executed, so I'm a fan of it. Next, we just have some documentaries that were included with the True Stories disc. The making of I especially really enjoyed. It's just very comprehensive and very well made. Kind of a modern take looking back on it. This one here, No Time to Look Back, is interesting. It's directed by two guys who have done a couple other documentary films that I really enjoyed. And this one's kind of funny. They're just kind of driving around the locations to see what they're like now. It's kind of like those sort of standard revisiting the locations featurettes that you get on these discs sometimes, but they just kind of did it out of their own accord. It's not like something Criterion staff did or anything like that. And they're just kind of like, you may be wondering why we decided to do this, and it might seem like a waste of time, but we don't care. We're doing it because we really like this movie. I don't know. It was fun. Next, we watched The French Dispatch on HBO Max because it was the last Wes Anderson film that we needed to see before we saw all of them. And what do I say about this one? It's okay, but we might want to put out like a missing poster for Wes Anderson, as I think he's gotten lost going so far deep up his own ass. Then we have the making of, which was like nothing. It was just like a fluff piece that has nothing to do with how they made it or anything like that. Next, I rented the Scream Factory 4K of Escape from New York, which I really enjoyed. This is when I started realizing how much stuff Harry Dean Stanton is in. He just keeps coming up after this. But yeah, Kurt Russell is like a ridiculous, like Clint Eastwood impersonator in this, but it kind of works. It's a real grimy, real dark looking film. I think is one you probably want to see in 4K because that lighting needs all the help it can get in terms of like actually making out what's happening on the screen. But yeah, in terms of dystopian fare, I think this is among the better ones, and it's a lot of fun, so check it out. Oh boy, next we watched Wolf, starring Jack Nicholson, on Hulu, I think. This one's okay, but it's definitely pretty cheesy. It has my man James Spader in it, which I liked. This is a fun one for sure to kind of watch with friends, but I don't think it's as serious or as good as it thinks it is. In any case, there's definitely some fun parts in it. Niles Crane is also in it. So that was a lot of fun for me. And then he says naughty words, and it was very strange for me. Next, we watched our Blu-ray copy of Pretty in Pink. I actually really loved this one. Harry Dean Stanton is in it again, giving, I think, maybe the best performance I've seen from him, and the best performance in the film, I think. But I thought this one was just really sweet and endearing, and there's a couple beats in the ending that I'm not 100% stoked on, but I actually really like the way that it ends and the message that it provides. I think that this is a pretty bold and progressive look at gender and gender dynamics, especially from John Hughes, who was not have the best track record on that front. But yeah, I really liked this one. Next, I watched my Vinegar Syndrome 4K of Thriller: A Cruel Picture. So this one has been getting a lot of talk, a lot of hype, and a lot of mixed reviews. But in terms of a rape and revenge film, I think it's really great, actually. And I think the original version with the hardcore inserts, I think is much better. I compared it to the other one, and I think it actually does add. They're not sexy at all, nor are they supposed to be. So yeah, I think they just make it grimier and dirtier and harder to watch, and that really adds to the atmosphere of the whole thing. there's a documentary on here that Vinegar Syndrome produced with a really weird narrator who, like, is telling the story of the director, and they keep calling him Film Lover instead of his name. It was so bizarre, and I didn't much care for it. Next we watched Twin Peaks: The Missing Pieces. I was a huge fan of this. Obviously, this is for your Twin Peaks completists, David Lynch completists, because it's exactly what it says. It's just literally a series of deleted scenes, alternate takes, etc., presented without any overarching narrative or anything like that. They're just straight up served to you as it is. But it works, I think. Like, these kind of emotional vignettes kind of build together into a larger emotional kind of theme or feel, you know? There's something about it that kind of adds to David Lynch's dreamlike approach to filmmaking. That's actually, I think, a really good way to describe what this feels like. In a way more accurate than I think a lot of dreamlike films out there, this does feel like a dream, and that is just random things kind of happening that don't really connect to each other, but when you wake up, you sense that there's a grander narrative to it, but you can't quite piece it together, you know? Yeah, I was a big fan. Next I watched Begotten on YouTube. I have seen clips from this for years and years and years, and I've always been really fascinated by it. And I finally just decided to watch it, and it completely blew me away. And I really, really want this to get a Blu-ray release. It's one of the most disturbing, bold, visually stunning films I've ever seen. Yeah, I was just head over heels for this. Okay, next we have a Topaz by Alfred Hitchcock off of the box set again. And this is easily the worst Hitchcock film I've ever seen. Nothing fucking happens in this whole damn film. Like, not one thing. Nothing interesting, nothing compelling. Okay, there's one shot in it that's really cool. That's it. It is so boring. It is so stuffy. It is so dry. And it is so long. I hated this. I really did. I didn't like it at all. I actually liked this little visual essay better. What's funny to me is he spends most of the runtime of this being like, okay, so I know you probably think this film is really bad, but it's actually only bad for a Hitchcock film. I'm like, okay, I get it, but you're tempering a lot of the praise you're giving this. I don't think it's bad for a Hitchcock film. I just think it's bad, but whatever. I rewatched Thriller. This time I watched the American cut. Again, I don't think it's as good, but it is really good. Next, we rented Enter the Void by Gaspar Noé. This really blew me away, and I've never seen anything like it. I thought it was completely unique from anything I've ever seen. It's very long, and it's very much like, if you're not on board with this, he does not give a fuck. You're just gonna watch. You're there for the ride, or you're not. You know. It's extremely gritty. It's extremely violent. It's extremely sexual. I think it's amazing. So much so that I bought the Arrow Limited Edition, and I'll be talking about it in a future video. Next, I rewatched Grizzly Man. I did a whole video review on this, so go check that out. Next, we rented the Blue Underground 4K of Uncle Sam. Now, even though this 4K is absolutely stunning, absolutely bulletproof, perfect 10 out of 10 from a visual perspective, the movie's not that good. Like, it's kind of campy fun, I guess, but it's kind of boring and kind of stupid, you know? It approaches a cogent political message, but it kind of loses itself pretty fast. Like, at first I was like, damn, this shit is based. And then I was like, that's not really what you were saying earlier. And then it's kind of like, well, you're a little all over the place. I don't know how coherent your messaging is or is trying to be. Next I watched Frenzy, again off of the Hitchcock box. And this was his kind of return to form in terms of just like a straight up horror thriller. And it's really, really good. It's like, this is kind of what Hitchcock has wanted to do his whole life, you know? He can finally put all the blood and titties that he always wanted to, you know? And it's the wrong man's story again. I mean, how many times is he going to make that? A lot. But, you know, when you made a stinker, you just got to go back to what you're good at, you know? And it is good. The documentary, and then we rented the 4K of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Finally got to see this film. I wanted to see it in theaters, and it just didn't happen. And then eventually we were coming up on the Blu-ray release, and I was like, I'm just going to rent it. Like, at this point, I might as well. As you can tell from my rating, I was completely just mesmerized, blown away, in love with this film. I think it really lives up to every ounce of the hype that it's been getting. There's so much to it that I'd have to do a full video review to go into it, why I love it so much, and all the things it's trying to say, and all the things that it successfully accomplishes. But, yeah. Again, I liked it so much that I bought the 4K, and I'll be talking about that soon. Next is Family Plot. I was so stoked to watch this because I finally finished that Hitchcock box. Not that it wasn't an amazing, enlightening experience going through that whole thing. It's just, it is jam-packed. And it was nice to, you know, kind of bookend that and move on to something else. It really felt like an accomplishment. But this is Hitchcock's final film that he ever did. A lot of people don't like this one, but I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun and enjoyable, and it was different from what he's known for, but it was still kind of like it felt like you were watching Hitchcock, you know? Yeah, I just had a lot of fun with this one. I'm glad he was able to go out on a high note. Then there was a documentary, which I was a little disappointed by, because I've been watching these documentaries after every single one of these films, and they kind of felt like they should have been building up to something to kind of put a nightcap on his whole career and kind of just like, I don't know, there's a sense of finality that was missing to this, and it just wasn't very in-depth. So, High and Low, and New York Ninja, and Re-Enter the New York Ninja I talked about in Cinema Sepulchre. The Lure we watched on the Criterion channel. Boy, this one's weird. It is... I don't know how to prepare you for what this film is. It's like a musical fairy tale, I guess, but it's also a body horror. I did really enjoy it. I think it's a really great kind of unique feminist horror film, but it's definitely not for everybody. And I could understand somebody watching it and being like, I don't know about that, because some of the songs I didn't like, and that's pretty important when you're making a musical. Next, I rewatched New York Ninja with the commentary, which was better than the film, honestly. Omen 3 I talked about in the video. Tokyo Fist, good lord. Boxing film as body horror is what I would describe this as. It is so gross. It is so violent. It is maybe one of the most violent films I've ever seen in my life. But it's a really great kind of indictment of toxic masculinity, and also just a straight up brutal boxing film, you know? High and Low documentary. Bullet Ballet. This one was weird. It was a little hard to follow, and it was very strange, very depressing, very grim. It's a very stark black and white photography to it that I really enjoyed. Yeah, it kind of goes off the rails towards the end and gets hard to follow and keep up with, but yeah, I think more people just need to see it so that we can all talk about it and figure it out together. I really liked it. Next, I watched the 4K of Sense and Sensibility from the Columbia Classics set. Aside from the 4K transfer just being absolutely stunning and absolutely immaculate, the film is actually really great too. Typically I'm not... Well, I'm always going in a little bit hesitant when it comes to this sort of what I like to call stuffy British period pieces. You know, sometimes it's just the outfits. I just get sweaty and like constricted just watching these people in these outfits, and the things they care about. You know, I guess sometimes it just feels like you're expected to be like, oh, woe is the rich landlord, and it just, I'm not here for it. But I mean, this is Jane Austen, you know, and it's just superbly written, acted, directed, shot. It's a gorgeous film to look at. The performances are all completely bulletproof. The script is good. Like, the emotional beats are earned. It's a great film. I suggest you check it out. Omen 4, The Awakening. This was the TV sequel, attempted revitalization of this franchise, and the big twist this time is that the it's a girl instead of a boy. This one's real dumb. It's fucking dumb as shit, but you know what? I thought it was pretty entertaining and pretty fun. So, we'll talk about another one coming up that... Okay, the remake is coming up, and I gotta say, I'll rewatch this over the remake any day. Blossoms in Blood, this was a kind of short film accompaniment to Punch Drunk Love. It was on the Criterion disc, and I thought it was weird and pointless, and I didn't really care for it. It was just kind of a random assortment of visuals over some music. I don't know, not for me. Mattress Man commercial. This was a quick little bit, I guess, that Philip Seymour Hoffman did. He's spoofing something that I haven't seen, so I guess that made it more difficult, but it's literally a minute long, and you can find it, so I don't know. It's fine, I guess. The Omen, the remake. I mean, it's competent, I guess. It's kind of intriguing sometimes. There's some fun, really cheap pop scares in it, and some creepy imagery, but it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Don't watch it, honestly. Nightmare Weekend I did a video on. Wild Things. Good lord. What to even say about this? Wild Things is trashy. It is sleazy. It is offensive. It is tackling very serious subject matter with the subtlety of a sledgehammer and the respect of the same. Man, I was intrigued. I was entertained by the whole thing. It's also got this like Everglades atmosphere to it that I hate. Like the whole thing is just like drenched in sweat and sunscreen and Florida, and it's just not my vibe. But putting that aside, Denise Richards and Neve Campbell give a good performance. Matt Dillon gives a pretty good performance. Kevin Bacon is questionable, as I think he usually is. The story makes no sense, and again, it's fairly offensive. And it gets... By the time you think it's gotten as ridiculous as it can possibly get, they do you one better, and it's just fucking absurd. But what can I say? I was reading about what they had to say about some of the reception, and they were like, look, with these erotic thrillers, like, critics liked it, and they were just ashamed to admit that they liked being titillated, and they liked a sexy movie with sexy scenes in it. I think that's partially true, and like, yeah, the plot is stupid, but visually and stylistically, I do think it's very good, and there's some real sexy scenes in it, and they're hot, and they work. And I think that that's okay in and of itself. I don't think it necessarily has to be any more than that. Yeah, I approve. There's also male nudity in it too, so always a fan of that. Equal opportunity. Sluttiness. Okay, next was this big-ass Omen documentary. Oh, no, that's later. This was just a shorter one. There was actually a lot of really good interviews in this and some really fun anecdotes, behind-the-scenes type stuff. I really enjoyed it. Next is Rapture, aka Aribato. I did a video on that. Hidden Fortress, I did a video on that. Ivan Z, that's a supplement for Rapture, did a video on that. The Omen Legacy. This was the long one. It's like an hour and 40 minutes. And again, the information is good. It actually uses a lot of the same clips that are in the other documentary and in some of the other supplements that I watched. So in that sense, it's a little bit repetitive, but the main thing I don't like is the way that this is narrated and edited. It is so fucking ridiculous. It is edited like a really trashy true crime documentary. And it's not. Like, it's trying to, like, hype up this kind of Omen curse thing that was going around. It wants you to buy into the, like, mythology of the Omen. I don't know. It's trying to be a sensational puff piece at the same time as it's trying to be, like, informative about films. And the former was pretty annoying, while the latter was pretty good, so what can you do? Next was the making of Jaws, off of the 4K. I'm gonna say the same thing that I said about the Psycho and Birds documentaries. Like, I wish every great film had a documentary this good and this expansive. It's 2 hours long. Like, it's almost as long as the film itself, and I think that that's necessary for something this iconic where there's so much to talk about. Yeah, it's just I just ate it up. I love this stuff, and this is among the best. So, if you have Jaws, which I'm sure most of you do, check out this documentary for sure. Next, we rented Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. There's a really just great and intense battle scene at the end between Godzilla and Megaguirus that is highly satisfying. There's not as much questionable CGI as there was in Godzilla 2000, but it's still there in spades, and it definitely detracts. I think the idea that they have in terms of how to kill Godzilla in this is pretty original and pretty fun. Overall, I think this one's pretty good, even though it has elements that I don't care for. Overall, I recommend it, and it's essential if you're going to go through all the Godzillas, obviously. So, last was Two Undercover Angels. This is a Vinegar Syndrome title that I'm going to talk about in a future video, so I will leave it at that, but here's a little spoiler for you. I fucking hated it. Okay, that's it. This video is still probably really long. I can't help myself, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it, and it's good for me to talk about all this stuff. And do a kind of retrospective of the absurd amount of film viewing that I do in a month. So, yeah, my links are in the description if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, on Instagram, and on Rate Your Music. I gotta ask you to please like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video with your cinephile, nerdy-ass friends. That's it. I hope you enjoyed. I love you all very much. I hope that your day ends better than it started.